Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms related, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here. So please take a moment, like and share this program, whether you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, or if you are listening to us on Apple Podcast, on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it. Let your friends know about the Firearms Policy Coalition and about Coffee with Craig so that they can join in the conversation. Also, please take a minute and go to fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It is a very, very cool place where you can go and you can find all sorts of stuff in order to show your support for the Second Amendment. You can find hoodies. You can find T-shirts. You can find coffee mugs. You can find different T-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs. You name it, you can find it all right there at fpcgear.com, and know that every penny that you spend will go right into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. That's fpcgear.com. All right, so I wanted to talk to you today about a program that has been launched by Moms Demand Action. That's right, Moms Demand Action. They've launched a program that is actually going to be part of, was going to be utilized in partnering with local school districts in order to help promote gun safety. Yeah, believe it or not, they're going to promote gun safety. Or are they? Here's a little bit about the program.
New at 6 tonight, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense visited Charlottesville High School to educate parents and faculty about gun safety. CBS 19's Brianna Hamblin is here with more. Brianna?
Hey, Tyler. Moms Demand Action is excited to work with Charlottesville City Schools to continue the conversation on preventing gun violence. The presentation taught everyone the Be Smart campaign. S stands for Secure All Guns. M means model responsible behavior around guns. A, ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. R, recognize the risks of teen suicide. And T, tell your peers to be smart. The local leader of Moms Demand Action says being smart can prevent future deaths by gun violence.
You can never account for the curiosity of a child. So, you always have to keep that in mind. You can't just tell them, don't go to the drawer. Instead, you put them in a locker, Keep the ammunition separate, keep the instruments separate.
The organization hopes other Virginia schools will also collaborate with them to spread the discussion of gun safety. The campaign is targeted for adults so that they can protect their kids while having a gun inside the home and later teach them how to keep safe too when they get older. Reporting live in the studio, Brianna Hamblin, CBS 19 News.
All right, so I'm sure that you can already tell, based on what you've seen so far, that there's probably a few issues that we rightfully have, and quite frankly should have, with the SMART campaign. But I wanted to go through it piece by piece, or step by step. It's a 5-step campaign, or lesson, as they like to refer to it. And so I wanted to kind of go through each one and kind of let you know what I think, because in the end, I think we all know that, their SMART campaign, may not necessarily be very smart. But let's talk about number one, which is, number one is about secure guns in your home and vehicles. Check it out. Here, by the way, this is the video kind of outlining the steps in their program.
A lot of parents don't give their kids enough credit. If your kids can get their hands into the cookie jar on top of the counter, they can certainly find your gun. A Harvard study found that 70% of kids under 10 know where their parents' guns are stored. Kids are curious, and unsecured guns are dangerous. Secure your firearms. Properly locking a gun and storing it unloaded and separately from the ammunition will help prevent dangerous situations. You may not be able to find your car keys, but children will always find the hiding places in your home and vehicles. It's all about taking the steps to not just hide, but secure your gun. It's just that easy. It's not rocket science, it's just being smart.
Okay, so let's talk about step number one. All right, first of all, let's talk about the idea of storing your firearm separate from the ammunition. So if you're going to store your firearm separate from the ammunition, what is the point of owning the firearm? Because in the end, when you need it, if there is someone who invades your house, how exactly are you supposed to be able to utilize your firearm when you don't have any ammunition? Plus, I'm assuming that if you are locking your firearm away, if you're putting it in a safe, with a combination and you're not sharing that combination with your kids, how exactly are they supposed to get in your safe? What is the point of having it unloaded there in the safe? Or if it's a biometric safe, what's the point of having the safe if they can't get into the safe? So why does it matter if the ammunition is there or not? Oh, and I love the example that they used where they actually put the ammunition in the safe and then they put a little lock. Yeah, you know, you guys have seen those locks. The ones, at least in California, they make you buy whenever you purchase a firearm, whether you own a safe or whether you own firearms or not, they make you buy this little itty-bitty lock, one that can be cut with a pair of pliers. Yeah. So explain, first of all, if that's all the ammunition you have is that fits in that little itty-bitty safe, let me just tell you, you clearly do not have enough ammunition. Just saying. You're not training. Which, by the way, is probably one of the things you should be talking about. Is teaching people how to train with their firearms, but that's part of firearm safety, which y'all don't really care about firearm safety. You just care about propaganda. But I'm just thinking, and oh, by the way, I love the fact that they have a cop there locking and securing the firearm, because we all know that all law enforcement officers are firearms experts, right? So we already know that point number one is idiotic. It's idiotic because then you defeat the purpose of even owning a firearm if you cannot have access to a firearm that is prepared and ready to use. Period. So we already know point number one. Point number one is a bunch of hooey. So let's talk about point number two, and let's talk about modeling responsible behavior.
Every year, around 100 children are killed in unintentional shootings. Every law-abiding adult has the right to own a gun, but with that right comes responsibility. We must always model responsible behavior. As parents, we all take steps to protect our children from potentially dangerous situations in the home. If you're considering bringing a gun into your home, think it through. Make sure every adult feels comfortable with that decision and knows that the gun must be stored inaccessible to kids 100% of the time. Consider any risk factors that might exist in your home. Is anyone vulnerable to mental illness or substance abuse? Finally, as all responsible gun owners know, it's crucial to practice safe handling at all times. Tragedies can be avoided. Lead by example. Be smart.
Okay, so as they talk about modeling responsible behavior, you notice the one thing that they don't involve at all? How about actual safe handling? They say, oh, you need to know safe handling, but they don't include it at all. They don't talk about it at all. They don't talk about responsible things like training on how to use your firearm, on how to, in the event that you should have to use your firearm, how to be safe with it. How about teaching your kids about the firearm, teaching them so that they can understand and be responsible? Modeling responsible behavior is not hiding your firearm away from your kids. That's not responsible behavior, because what that does is when you hide it away, and they already said it, if they will find your gun. And if you make it this mystery that I'm going to hide away, guess what? Not only are they going to look for it, but when they do find it, if you have not modeled good behavior, if you have not taught them, if you haven't taught them safe handling, if you haven't taught them what to do if they're at their friend's house and their friends, their friend says, hey, you want to see my dad? You haven't taught them what to do or how to handle that situation because you don't want to talk to them. You don't want to get them, your children. You don't want to talk to your children. No, instead you want to hide your children, which, by the way, we all know is not exactly the smartest thing to do. So let's move on to the next step. So the next step in this process is ask about unsecured guns in other homes. Oh, now this is a hornet's nest.
Let's face it, sending the kids away for the day or even a few hours can be a blessing. But whether it's a babysitter's home or with another family for a play date, it's our responsibility as parents to ask the right questions. I have to ask. All parents have a checklist. Do you have a cat? No, my kid's super allergic. A pool? Nope, he's not that buoyant either. A gun? Yes, we have 2 hunting rifles. And how are they stored? They're locked in a safe and the ammunition's locked up as well. And how do you handle screen time? Oh, we only let our son watch American teen sitcoms from the 90s. Great. See you at 4. 1.7 million kids live in homes with guns that are loaded and unlocked. I don't want my kids to be in one of those homes, whether it's a friend, a babysitter, or a relative. Even when the kids are visiting Grandma and Grandpa, we need to be smart and ask the right questions.
Okay, so in other words, let's do this. Rather than preparing our children for the world, we're going to now try and change the entire world in order to fit our children. You know, when my kids were little, I didn't know a firearm. I didn't, right? But I've always believed in the right to keep and bear arms. But the thing is that one of the things that I also knew was that I can't prepare my children. I mean, I can't prepare the world for my children, but what I can do is prepare my children for the world. So I could talk to my kids about, look, this is what happens if you come across a firearm. This is what you do. Even though I didn't own a firearm, I was able to do that. And that's what quite frankly, every responsible parent should do. Just like you don't undo the entire world to make sure that your kids never see or have access to adult material when they're kids, right? Right? Do you? No, you know that there's sometimes you can't control what they're going to see or what they're going to engage in or what they're going to come across when they're out there. What you can do is prepare them on how to handle it. Now, let's say you call a parent, right? Most of the times, I mean, how many of your children's parents do you really know, right? Do you know if they're going to tell you the truth or not? Do you? Do you know them that well? No, you probably don't. So how do you know they're going to tell you the truth? How do you know your child is still not going to come across a firearm when they're there at their home? But you've done absolutely nothing to prepare your child in the event that should happen. Why? Because you are trying to change the world in order to protect your child. And really what you're doing is you're preparing your child for failure. You're preparing them to get hurt because you're doing absolutely nothing to prepare them. Instead of, once again, educating your child. Hey, look, if you come across a firearm in the home, in your friend's home, first of all, you shouldn't be going through any of their stuff where you could come across their firearm, number one. Number two, if your friend should decide that he wants to take you on a little adventure to see your parent's gun, you know to say no. You know to get on the phone and call me and I will come get you. Because you don't need to be around that sort of irresponsible behavior. But the child is irresponsible because, well, maybe their children, maybe their parents are irresponsible. So maybe if that's the case, maybe you need to rethink about who your kids are hanging out with. Oh, that's a hard one because now that's on you. Ooh, okay, I know. That's a tough one. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that you're trying to make up for bad parenting because you don't want to take the time to get to know your kids, parents, to teach and educate your children on some of the hard facts of life and some of the things that they need to know about. In this particular case, we're talking about what to do in the event that you come across a firearm or how to be safe around firearms and to have a proper level of respect for firearms. All right, moving right along. Recognize the risks of teen suicide. Now, this one I happen to agree with. To a degree.
Have you ever thought about how often we make snap decisions only to regret them later? Teenagers can be especially impulsive and emotional. They can be up one day and down the next. And as any parent can tell you, kids don't always make the best decisions. And some decisions are irreversible. Each year, over 400 kids, age 17 and under, die by suicide with a gun. That's why we need to recognize the risks of teen suicide. The presence of an unsecured gun is one of those risks. Researchers have found that when it comes to young teens, the presence and availability of a gun in the home may be a more significant risk factor than psychiatric illness. If a teen has access to a gun in vulnerable moments, an impulsive decision can become a fatal one. Some teens might show other warning signs. If you notice a change in your teen's mood or behavior, or if you hear them make comments like, "You'd be better off without me," it's time to take action. If you need help, call 1-800-273-TALK, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Firearms are the most lethal method for suicide attempts, resulting in death 85% of the time. That's why it's crucial to keep them inaccessible to teens. So be smart, because we all share in the responsibility of keeping our kids safe.
Okay, so let's break this down real quick. Now, number one, I firmly believe that you need to know what's going on with your kids. And maybe if these, soccer moms spent more time actually with their kids, talking with their kids, getting to know what's going on in their children's lives, instead of making videos to make themselves feel good, maybe you would start to know and recognize some of these things that are going on. Now, there's a bit of intellectual dishonesty here, and that is that when they talk about a firearm being present in the home, they're acting as if it is causal. See, in statistics, there's things that are correlative and things that are causative. Correlative means A and B are heading down the same track, all right, or heading in the same direction. Causative means A causes B. Now, they are acting as if a firearm in the home is causative, meaning because there's a gun in the home, that is, they are likely to commit suicide. And the problem with that is that it doesn't understand it doesn't address the actual cause of why someone would attempt to commit suicide. And oh, by the way, let me just throw this out there. First of all, any death, any needless, senseless death, in particular by suicide, is a sad one, especially when we're talking about young people. But we're talking about 400 deaths. That's how many she said, 400 deaths. And how many firearms are there owned in this entire country? How many households are there? 30% of all households in this country, in 30% of all households, there is a firearm. And yet you have 400. So the point that I'm making here is that what you're talking about in this particular case is a very, very small percentage of homes where there's actually a firearm, of people who actually own firearms where this is the case. And how many overall suicides do you have annually? I mean, think about it. Suicides by firearm, there's what? Over 22,000? Over 20,000? 400 of them are teenagers. Now, maybe it's just me, but I think that's a pretty small percentage. I don't know. I think that, when we start talking about policies, and once again, I said any deaths are too many, but when you start talking about implementing policy that then affects the lives and the safety of millions of people, I think we need to take a look at what is the upside versus the downside, right? The downside is you put millions of people at risk. The upside is you may possibly reduce that number of suicides by 10, 20, while at the same time potentially putting millions of people at risk. I don't believe that is an appropriate trade-off. But once again, that's just my 2 cents. All right, and the last one, tell your peers about SMART.
Your friends tell you when they've received a promotion at work. Your kids tell you when they ace a test. What's being smart without telling people about it? SMAR is nothing without the T. Talk to your friends and family about being smart. Start a conversation about kids, guns, and safety. Share the message on social media and spread the word about Be Smart in your community. Talk about what we can do right now to keep our kids safe. If every single one of us commits to being smart, imagine the impact we'll have.
Yeah, so I am going to tell all of my friends about SMART and how dumb it actually is. If we want to, first of all, understand that the overwhelming majority of firearm deaths, 2/3 are suicides. And so we do need to address that. But that is a suicide issue, not a firearm issue. We've already seen in countries like Japan where they have no access to firearms, we've seen that suicide is rampant. Yet I don't see anything in Japan about, rope about rope violence right? They're talking about and they're dealing with the issue of suicide and suicide prevention. And I'm sorry, but disarming people, disarming law-abiding citizens, locking up their firearms and making them inoperable so that you can't get to them when you need them is not making people safer, and it's not preventing suicide. It's not. So yeah, you guys are just dumb. If you want to teach firearm safety, teach people the appropriate level, teach young people in particular, the appropriate level of respect for firearms. Let them know that it's not a toy. Let them know how to safely handle it should they come across one. Teach them respect for them. And when you do that, you will see less childhood accidents. And then, I don't know, maybe spend some time with your kids, right? Get to know them. Get to know what's going on in their lives, right? Get to know when they're having challenges and work with them and help them to work through those challenges, to be emotionally and psychologically healthy. Help them to do that. If you take the time to do that, then maybe you'll see less teen suicide. And then when it comes to overall safety, when it comes to firearm safety, once again, I'll just go back to this. When you start getting away from suicide, the overwhelming majority of firearm deaths, fatalities, are gang or drug related. And I know some of y'all out there get tired every time you hear me say that, but I cannot say it enough. It is not the firearm that causes death. It's not the firearm. I'm sorry, I hate to tell you that. It's a tool, but it's not the cause. And until you address the underlying issue when it comes to gang and drug activity, you're going to continue to see this. You're going to continue to see this sort of impact in communities like Chicago, like Oakland, like Los Angeles, like New York. It's going to continue to happen because you guys want to bury your head in your sand and you want to make videos that are not smart. They are just plain dumb. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.